Hi, my name's Keith Cooper for Northlight Images. This video is about something that quite often people ask me about when they buy a new printer, and I say you shouldn't do it. And that is buy sample packs of papers to go with your new printer. Now, I'm going to cover why it is inherently a waste of time, money, ink, effort, and other things like that. But I will come back to when printer paper test packs are a great idea and can be genuinely helpful. But first, the idea of I've got a brand new printer, I'm not sure what paper I should use in it. Oh, I'll buy a sample pack. I've got a few sample packs around here of more and less utility, but I said I'll come back to that as to what is actually useful, what I feel. If you've got a new printer, and actually this is not just if you're new to printing, it goes for myself as well. This Canon Pro 310, which I'm currently testing. A few years ago I tested this Canon Pro 300. They're very similar. Why I've got them both here together to show just how similar they are. But when I get a new printer, I do not immediately rush out, and I've got quite a collection of papers I've built over the years. I do not immediately rush out and think, right, I'll put this one in, I'll get a big huge collection of papers to try. What do I actually start with a new printer? I start with something. If it's an Epson printer, I'll start with, I've got a pack of Epson Premium Lustre. I've got some Epson Premium Glossy as well. If I'm testing the Canon here, I've got some Canon Pro Lustre, some Pro Platinum Glossy. Matte papers, I will also test some matte papers. I'll go for something like Epson Archival Matte, Epson Enhanced Matte. The two are subtly different. Other than that, there's a Canon PM101 Matte, which is a very good matte paper, works well in Epson papers as well, in Epson printers as well. But the key thing is, I'll just start with one or two papers to test things. And the idea is that if I don't know how a printer performs, and if it's a new printer to me, even if it's one I think I know well, such as the 310 here, which is very similar to the 300, I want to look at it afresh. I want to see, how does it work? And the easiest way to do something like that is to make sure you use a Canon paper in this, or an Epson printer, use an Epson paper in it. One that is actually supported. Because the other thing is, as well as getting test packs of paper, the tendency is to think, I've got my favourite photos, I want to print these photos and see what they look like. Well, that's great. Remember, even if you're experienced in using printers, it's easy to get things wrong to start with. I mess things up when I'm testing new printers sometimes. That's why I will always use a standard test image to do it. Now, I've got a standard test image. In fact, I've got a couple of them that I regularly use. Now, this one, the images here, these I can't distribute. This comes from inside when you install i1 Profiler, which I use for making printer profiles. I do cover this in another video, aspects of where this image comes from. That's a good one, but this is the standard one, the one at the top here. It's downloadable. I've got a copy on my website. In fact, I've got lots of different test images. If you get this, have a look at the text that's with it, because it actually tells you what all these little panels are for. Now, I test any new printer with this image, and I also, if I'm testing more advanced stuff, I use this one here. But in general, I always start with this. Now, I say to people, don't start with one of your own images. Well, you might have thought, well, hang on, this picture here, this is one of your pictures, Keith. Why are you testing it with that? Fair enough. However, I have printed this image hundreds of times, and I know what it looks like on different printers. And that's one of the things. I know what it looks like. Now, I've got this test image, but there's aspects of this one here, and I've got one for black and white as well. Now, in using these, I can see if this doesn't print right, I've set something up wrong with the printer. And I can get it wrong. And I'm pretty sure if you're new to printing and you've just got yourself a printer, you're going to get it wrong as well. You may be lucky, you may go straight through. I would hope that you would get it okay. But you have to accept that it could go wrong. And the whole idea of that test image is there is nothing wrong with that picture. That picture, if you print it, it comes out wrong. You have messed up somewhere along the way. You have got a printer setting wrong. You might, if you're on a Mac, you might have accidentally installed the AirPrint driver rather than the proper printer driver. You might have used the wrong profiles. All sorts of things can cause problems. But the one thing you do know, that if that image comes out wrong, it's not the image. If you go to test one of your own images that you don't have lots of experience of printing, and it looks wrong, you've actually no way of knowing whether you've got the printer set up wrong or it was your photography, your editing, or anything. But anyway, enough of the test images. They're the key bit. But the problems with sample packs. Now, I've got a few here. This is Ilford Gallery Discovery Pack. Now, someone kindly sent me this to make some profiles. There are 5 sheets of 6 different papers. 5 sheets is far too few for me to evaluate a paper. It is enough for me to make profiles. And I did make a set of Ilford profiles for the Epson ET 8550. Why did I make those? Well, partly because I wanted to test the papers, because they're popular papers in some regions. But also, Ilford don't provide profiles for the 8550, or they didn't at the time of testing. These things can change. But there comes the key bit about one of the key problems about sample packs. Too few sheets of paper and no profiles. Now, in this 5 sheets, yeah, that's just about enough that I'd be happy doing a test with it. But not until I understood how well the printer worked. Here's a test pack, and this is one that I know several people have said, oh, I've got one of these, and there's several versions. This is a Hahnemühle test pack. Now, Hahnemühle makes some absolutely great papers. These are their basic photo papers, and in this one, photo matte fibre, photo matte duo, so that's a double-sided version, photo glossy 260, photo lustre 260, photo pearl 310. Now, you might think, you just said, start with basic papers like a lustre, a gloss, maybe a matte. That's exactly what you need. Yeah, it is. But there are no profiles for these papers for the Epson 8550, for example. Now, great if you've got an Epson P900, one of the more expensive printers, you will find profiles for these. I'm still going to say that 2 sheets, albeit they're A3 plus sheets here, 2 sheets is not enough really to properly evaluate. So you're probably going to need several sample packs. I'd also suggest maybe getting A3 sample packs, because then you can cut them in half to make A4 sheets and you double the number of sheets you've got. But anyway, problem here for the 8550, which is a very popular printer, one I happily recommend to people to get into printing. No profiles for it. Now, I've made profiles, if I remember rightly, for a few of these papers. I can't remember whether I've made profiles for all of these. I will have to check. But if you haven't got access to that, then you've just got some very nice paper. Put them through your printer. Do you know you've got the settings right? Whatever. So that's always a problem. Now, these particular sheets here, these are some Epson papers. Now, I had some packs of these, and there was only 2 sheets of each. Once again, not really enough. In this one, Epson Fine Art Cotton Smooth Natural. These are profiling sheets, so I need 2 sheets of this to make a profile for the... These are the sheets I used for making a profile for this, the 310. That's partly because I know that nobody will ever make Epson paper profiles for a Canon printer and vice versa. So I always try and do a few. Well, at least now I haven't got any for some of my older printer reviews, but I do try and make sure there is a sort of cross range of profiles, because you might have some of these papers and you've got one of these printers and you want to use them. You don't want them to go to waste. So this one here, here's Epson Signature Worthy Trial Pack. Now, Epson do provide profiles. These are standard papers. This is a potentially useful pack of test papers because you've got profiles for them. They're standard Epson papers if you're using an Epson printer. But even so, if you're using some of the smaller printers, there won't be profiles for them. So if you're using high-end printers, then you expect profiles and you expect support, and you expect the process is a lot easier. But if you've just got yourself a brand new printer and you're thinking, oh, I want to experiment, great that you want to experiment. But the problem is you can experiment as much, but your results don't mean anything. You need something to compare. Now, I've got an example here of very useful but utterly useless test pack. This is a test pack, sample pack of Japanese washi, fine art and professional photo, 18 sheets of it. I think there are quite a few. Yeah, there are 16 types, so there's like one sheet of each. I've had these for a while. One day I will actually test them on a printer somewhere when I think of images that warrant such papers and are worth using up my stock of them. Yes, it's a lovely paper. It's great. You know, see the fibres in it and things like that, if that matters to you. But as a test pack, it sits in my stock, utterly useless, because I've got like one try at using each one. And I don't have the experience of using these papers to go, oh, I think I'll do such and such on them. There's no point me thinking, oh, I wonder what a high key image printed on such and such. That's it, one sheet, gone. So useful, but utterly useless in so many ways. So that's that. Now, I did say they are useful when you want stuff. So the key things when to get your test packs. One, you're experienced in printing and you have your new printer, you've looked at it with the standard papers, you're happy everything's working. Great way of exploring. But do remember, it's very image dependent, paper choice and things like that. So in some ways, if I gave a sample pack of 10 different papers, all subtly different, such as the difference between these, whether they're smooth finish or this one's a smooth finish, this is a textured finish, and I can feel the different finishes on them. How are you going to decide between these? Sometimes having lots of choice makes choice very difficult. So yeah, do it with care. But when you know what you're doing and you can get profiles for the papers, because profiles make all the difference, even on basic printers. When you can get the profiles, when you can get the papers, by all means, have a go at doing it. But don't make it a scattergun approach. Think you want an art paper, for example. Your choices are, and this is why one of the reasons I use this particular set here, these Epson ones, is that we've got a smooth art paper, we've got a slightly textured paper. You may like the feel and the look of the textured paper for your images over the smooth paper. I generally prefer smooth papers myself. The other choice, and I'm not sure this will entirely show here, is that how bright is the paper. There are two versions of these papers. One that's got optical brighteners in, and optical brighteners themselves are not inherently bad. They may affect some aspects of longevity, but that's much overplayed. It is, do you want a paper that is a bright white, or do you want a more natural looking, slightly warmer looking paper? Now, I find that for some of my architectural images in black and white, they work very well on the natural papers. certainly older buildings. Similarly, some newer buildings and colour versions work better on a bright paper. So there's all sorts of subtleties like that. So the general thing is make sure you understand your printer. You know you've got it set up before you splash out on sample packs. And if you have just bought yourself a new printer and you have a sample pack, great. Put it away until you actually know enough about that printer to be able to tell what the differences are. The differences are often quite subtle. And the other thing is, if somebody tells you such and such a printer, such and such a paper is great, but don't tell you which printer they're using, be careful to how you take notice of that, because it's different on different printers. So these papers look different on this is a pigment ink printer, than they do on this, which is P5000 Epson 17-inch pigment ink printer. There is a misconception that profiling makes all your pictures look the same and that all your pictures will now match your screen. Utter nonsense. First of all, you can never truly match a screen in a print. But the other thing is, if I print the same image on a matte paper and on a glossy photo paper, they're going to look different. I expect them to look different. Just because I've profiled them doesn't mean they're going to look the same or like the screen. That is a key thing you will have to gain by experience. Now, sample packs can help. Incidentally, if there are any paper suppliers reading and watching this and wondering, oh, has Keith looked at any of our papers? If you have to ask, I probably haven't. But if you want to send me some papers to test, I ask for a minimum of a full box of A3. Ideally A3+, but A3. I will look at occasionally at papers on A4, but if you're a paper supplier, you can send me A3 or A3+. As I say, A3 I can always cut in half down to A4 and use that for just testing and stuff. Although I do much prefer making profiles on these large sheets like this. Anyway, hope that's of some interest, and I hope it saves a bit of wasted paper. And if you've got any questions, please do just ask, let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and bye.